Hi guys, welcome back. Now that we have learned a lot of different things, let's put everything together and build our very first project. A really simple and minimalistic version of Twitter. And we want to create a simple application that has a kind of user registration form, a box to add tweets, and a section where we can show the tweets. We should also, I think, yeah, add a feature let the user remove tweets. So along all these different features, we want to make all the data persistent so that after the user refreshes the page, all the tweets are still there and visible, while the registration forms gets hidden. So the first thing that we should do is actually to define a few tasks that we want to work on. Let's break this whole project into three main tasks, three big tasks. So create a registration form, create a tweet box, and create a tweet section where we show all the tweets. And also we need to do a bit of research on what tools we need to use to achieve what we want, so to achieve our goal. And I've already done that, so we of course need Vue.js. We need local storage to make our data persistent, and it would be cool to have like icons. So we will use 1000 for the icons. The application that we are going to build has no database, so we are unable to record multiple users and their tweets. So this is just a proof of concept, something that we build with our new knowledge. So let's get started and create our project structure. So let's move into code mode. Right, so we have, of course, an index.html file and a style.css file. Inside the index.html file, we will put the basic structure for our page. So HTML5 and autocomplete this, and we will call it simple Twitter clone. Okay, and the first step is, of course, import all the tools that we need to achieve our first task. So I already have some links to copy. So we will first copy in the head section of our HTML file. So the CDN for 1000. Then we can add CDN for Vue.js. And finally, we will link our style sheet. And the style sheet is in the root of our project, so that's gonna be fine. Okay. So we have the basic in the head, everything we need. We also want to break these three tasks we talked about. So the first thing is going to be registration form or register an account. So a registration form. Then we have the other task add tweet. And finally, we have the last task show all tweets. And there is one more thing we need to do, otherwise Vue.js won't work. So we need to add our script at the bottom. And the script is going to be inside this main folder. So I'm gonna call it main.js, and we need to create it. So let's add a new file. Okay, so we now have everything we need to start working on our project. Let's organize all the different tasks. all the different files and tabs. Okay, so now the next step, of course, is to go inside our main.js file and create our very first Vue instance. So let app is going to be equal to a new Vue instance, which is just an options object, and we can specify some properties. So the first property is going to be the EL property, and we need actually a root element. So I'm going to call it app, so which means that these three things will be done, these three tasks will be done inside our root element. So div with an ID of app. Okay. So we have everything now, and let's complete the Vue instance. Of course, we will have a data object and methods object. Okay, so that's pretty much everything we need for now. So I've already created a bunch of rules for the CSS. So everything we need to have a nice look for our application, so we don't have to do it manually. You can copy everything from my Bitbucket account. I will leave a link in the description, and that's what I'm gonna copy inside the style.css file. So later on we can use these rules to show everything we need for our application, so to style the application as we need. So now the basic structure is ready to go, and we have created inside the root element of our application all the different tasks, the three main tasks that we will work on. So let's start with the first one. So the register an account, the registration form. So let's simulate a registration form. Why I say simulate? Because we don't have a server on the backend where we can send information and store the user data in a database. So we will simulate a registration form and store all this data inside the data object of our Vue instance, and then we will retrieve this information and use them to show a message to the user when he's registered and logged in. So the first thing that we want to do is to create the registration form. So the registration form will need the following fields. So name, will need an email, password, and the submit button, of course. Okay, so that's the plan. So that's what we need to have. So let's leave this in the comment above. Okay, so we need these three, and I will put everything inside the card to replicate a little bit the design of the Twitter registration form. And so everything is going to be in a card. And since we have also this link to Phantasm, so we can use the Twitter icon so to make the final result as close as possible to the original one. So let's have a card. Not like that. On a div with an ID and a class of card. Okay. And in here, I will put all the things that I need, so for the form. But first, before the form, we have a Twitter icon. So Twitter icon is gonna be large. So here we have, and after that, I'll add an H1, H2, make it smaller, create your account like that. And after that, we can have our form. So the form is gonna be, it doesn't matter where the form submits, and so I will not add any action or method for the form. I will just simply use Vue.js to simulate the form submission. So I have a form, and in here I'll have 3 different fields that we talked about. So the name, the password, and the email. And I will wrap everything in the form group, similar to how it's done in Bootstrap, but we have our own classes. So we have a div with form group. So this class has been defined, of course, inside our style.css file. And now what I want to do is add a label. And after the label, we say this label is for the name. And we have a name. Okay. After that, we have an input of type text. And the name is gonna be always name, and the ID is gonna be name. And what I'm gonna do is use vModel on this element to bind this data with the data object from the Vue instance. So vModel, and we will have name property later on, and I will also add 2 more attributes. So a max length, we can say 25 characters, and then required. So now what I want to do is to add the other 3 fields, including the submit button, and complete our form. So we have a div with a class of form group. Inside we will put a label plus an input type text, email type email. Okay, we misspelled label. Okay, so this is going to be for the email. So we have email. Actually, we don't need these attributes for the form as it is, because we are not sending any data to a backend web server, so it's going to be fine, but I will leave them anyway. So email, and then we have the model, which connects this input field to an email property, and then we also have a max length and the required attributes. So just copy that and paste here. So after this one, we need password. Okay. So the label is going to be for the password, and we have password here. Then the input type is going to be password, the name password, and ID password. The vModel connects this to a password object in the data object, and we have required, maybe for the password, the max length could be just 16. Should be enough. Okay, and then we have a registration. After that, we have the submit button. Okay, and we have button type submit, and we say register. Okay, so now let's break this down and review what we've done. So the first thing that you will notice is the this vModel directives on each input field. So we connect each input with the data object. We also have to add a vModel, a vOn directive up here, because this vOn directive will actually submit our form. So we will call the submit, and then the modifier prevent, which actually prevents the default behavior of this form, so which is actually refreshing the page. So register account. So that's gonna be the method that we would call register to register the user data after he press submit. After that, so we use the submit, so we will listen for the submit event and also use the prevent modifier, so that the event, so before the page is not refreshed when the user submits the form. And in the vOn directive, we use the register account, which will be the method that we will use to submit the form, so something that we will need to create inside the methods object. And yeah, that's it. I mean, nothing else. So we have vModel, vOn, and submit event, and the prevent modifier, and that's it. Now what we can do is actually to move to the JavaScript side and implement everything we need to make this work. So as you see, we also have these 25 characters for the max length of this form input field, and we will need to reflect these inside our data object. So in the data object, we will need to create some properties, including something where we can store all the information for the current user. So let's add them. So the first thing that comes to my mind is to have a user data object, which for now is empty. But when we submit the form, we will populate this object. Then we have name, which is the property that we bind in the input field. So we have this empty as well. Then we have an email property, which is empty again. We have a password, again empty. Then in the comma there. Then we have max length property. We can define in one place the max length for these two input fields. So we say 25, and then we can have also max password length. Misspelled this. Okay, and we say it is 16. So later we can use this information and update these attributes, and we can use the vbind directive so that we can have in one place this information, and in case we want to change them, we only need to change them from here. So next step is gonna be to create the method that we will call when the form is submitted. So let's create this, and let's write in here the tasks that we need to follow to complete this registration process. So record the user data. So user submits form and we record this data inside the user data property. Then we should make this data persistent, so we should add them to the local storage. Which is, by the way, the other part, so the other tool that we will need to build our application. We say we need Vue.js, we need the local storage to make the data persistent, and then we use Phantasm to show the icons. And after that, we need to, so we register the user data, we add them to the registration information to the local storage, and we should also, after the user types, we should clear the registration fields, because otherwise this information will still be there after the user submits the form. So clear the registration fields. Okay, so we have the main tasks that we want to complete for the registration. We have this form. Let's see how it looks like for now. Okay, so okay, that's fine. Probably I forgot to have a class on the email field. That's why it looks weird. It doesn't look like the other two. So let's fix that. Let's see. Form. Yes, we misspelled group for the email. Okay. Now it should look like the other. So that's the basics, the basic CSS that I've written for this application. So we have the registration button, the input fields they look like a bit more the actual fields that you find in the registration form of Twitter, the real one. And so the next step is going to be show a character counter up here. So while the user types, we show him how many characters he has left. Because for now, let's open up the inspector and see, if, of course, if the Vim model is working. It seems that we have a problem. Let's see what. Okay, it seems that we misspelled something else. Let's check. Okay, so we have an email and the name, the email, so they are not defined. Okay, let's see. Name, email, and password. They are defined correctly, and they should work. And let's fix this. So, yeah, we misspelled the data object. So we should be good to go. Let's refresh the page and see if it's working. Yes, now it works. So if we type something in the name, we should see this name property updating immediately. So Fabio, yeah, you see, we have my name, and then, okay, everything works fine. So the next step is going to be let the user submit this information. So, but before we do that, we should do a characters counter. So let's change a couple of things here. So first we have this max length property. We could so bind these to the related property, so this one, and we can do the same for this one. And we could do the same for this one, but this time we'll use the other property because it's 16 for the password. So we can now implement the characters counter. So I'll put this inside the label because what I want to do is show this characters counter next to the name label. So right here on the right side, and the CSS that I've written will let me do that and show it nicely. So we can put a span, and in here what we could do is use the properties that we defined, so the name and the max length, to create a kind of counter. So we show first the characters, what the user types, how many characters he typed inside this name property. So the name.length will do that. Plus we will concatenate a slash and make the comparison with the max length property. And we should be good to go. Okay, so we have 0 on 25 over 25, and we type something and the characters amount increase. Let's type something, and it when we reach 25, we no longer can keep writing because of the max length property that we define here. So now we can do the same thing on all the other fields. We need to put this in a span, otherwise it won't work. It won't look nice as the other one. Okay, and this time it's not going to be the name, but the email. And after that, we can have another one here. And change this to password. And this time it's not going to be the max length, but it's going to be the max pass length. Okay. Now it should work. Everything should look fine. And indeed, okay, we have the name field, the email field, and the password field. We can press register, and of course it will, the front-end validation will tell us that something is wrong in this field. So if we do that, we press refresh, we press the register, and actually it did what it should do, but of course we still see all the data in the fields. That's why we have this task of clear the registration fields. So we will do it in a minute. So now the next thing that we want to do is actually add this logic in here to submit and actually register the user. So the first thing we want to do when the user types this information in the input fields, we want to add them inside the user data object. So we can create 3 property in the user data object, so the name, the email, and the password on the fly. And we do that by using this variable, and then user data, and then we want the name property, which should be equal to this name.name. So it's going to be equal to the it's going to be equal to this one, so this name. Then we can have this dot user data not date, user data dot email, which is going to be equal to this email. And after that we want this user data again dot password. That's going to be equal to this password. Okay, so now we have everything stored in here, but as I said, when we click the register button, this data will still be there. So we need to clear them. We need to clear this field. So user types in this property takes the value of what the user typed, and then we need to clear everything. So we put them back as an empty string. So this dot name is gonna be equal to an empty string, and the same thing is gonna be for the other two fields. Empty, and this password is gonna be empty. Okay, now we should do it, and let's see if everything is actually stored inside the object. So this property. So we should see this property user data. So this object populate after we type, we press register. So quite insecure password, but it's fine. So this, the input fields are now clear. And as you see here, we have everything stored inside the data object. So the user data object. So that's working, but as you might notice, there are few things that we need to update to make this thing a little bit better. And let's see what we want to do. Okay, so now if the user doesn't type anything inside these input fields, we will still let him submit his form. Instead, we should show an error message. So we should have a really basic validation on the JavaScript side, and we could simply for now check if these fields are empty or not. If they are empty, we will not allow the user to submit the form. Otherwise, if they are not empty, we will let them submit the form. So we should wrap everything that we have here inside an if statement. And what we could do is, as I said, we should check if the name is empty, so it's different from empty. And also the email is different from empty. And finally, we do the same for the password. So in this case, we will actually store this data inside the object, and otherwise, so we use the else, we can have an error property. We need to create it inside the data object, so let's do that. And for now, it's going to be an empty string. And in case, we should say complete all fields. Okay, something really simple, nothing crazily complicated. So let's check if it works. And of course, one thing we need to do after that is actually to show this error message to the user. And how do we do that? We should, of course, have something inside in the markup to do that. So we could wrap this form inside an if directive. So div simple, just a simple div with a if. And what we could do here is to check if the user if actually there are no errors. So before that, we could have a if for the errors. So we if error dot length greater than 0, then we show the error. Okay, so that will do it for just for the error messages, and then we will see what we need to do more on this part. So let's try to submit the form empty. And of course, we need to disable the front-end registration validation. So let's do that for this one. Let's do that for this one too. And finally for the password. We remove the React form actually. So we remove everything and we try complete all fields. Okay. So now we have this error message. Of course, we should put it somewhere else. We will do it later. But for now, I think it's gonna be fine. So now that the form is complete and it actually shows and display an error message to the user when there is a required attribute that is removed from the markup, we need to make also the data persistent when we refresh the page, because if I refresh the page now and I check the data object, you see that everything is gone. So the user data are no longer here. Before moving forward, let's actually move this inside the card, this error in the card. Oops. Okay. Let's try to submit the form again. Let's remove just one of these required attributes. Let's try to register. Of course, this one we need to fill it. And we need to fill this one too. And complete all fields. Okay, that now looks better. So now we should make this data persistent so that when we refresh the page, everything is still there. And to do that, we need to actually work with the local storage API that lets us save some information inside the browser, the client's browser. So we need to have this user data object stored inside the local storage, and let's implement that. So in here we need to add a couple of lines of code to work with the local storage. So the first thing we need to do is call the local storage, and we can use the set item to store something in the local storage, and we need to specify key value pair. So the key is gonna be simple tweet registered, and we say true. Anyway, that's gonna be saved as a string. Next, we need to store the local for the entire user data inside the local storage. So here we've saved a key that has like a value true, because we want to check if the user has already done the registration. That should be tweaked, not like that. Okay. And now we should store all the user data. So local storage again, dot set item, and then we can say simple tweet registered user. So the simple tweet is the name of our application, and then to store an entire object, we need to turn the object into a string, and we can use the JSON stringify function to do that. So the JSON stringify, and in here we pass the string that we want to turn, the object that we want to turn into a string. So this user data. Okay, so now everything is going to be stored in the local storage, and after that, of course, we need to actually check if the user, when we start our application, we need to check if the user has been already registered. So if it is, we should hide this form and show a tweet box and the list of tweets. So for now, what we should do is the local storage should be used to check if the user has been already registered, so if he has this key in the local storage, and if he has, we should change what he sees. So we should use this simple tweet registered and check if it is true, then we can hide this form, otherwise we can show it. So let's do that. So we should create some sort of property here, like registered, and set this to false. Need a comma here and no colon here. Okay. So by default, this is going to be false. So the user is not registered, and we can use a beef to wrap the entire form. So our entire registration form, including the error, so all this bit, we could wrap this in a div with a div directive, so it checks if this is not registered. Okay, so let's move this information. So then after the icon, so this bit should be part of the, so should be shown only if the user is registered or not. So the register, and we have if, and we can check if it's not registered. So if it's registered, so the opposite of what we have here. So if it's not registered, we can show this form and this information here. Otherwise, we hide them and we show something else, always inside the card. So we show these, and actually what we could do, since there is only a form in the page, we could also move the button, this button here, we could move it up here just to make it look more like the actual form. So I'm not yet registered. Okay, that's now looks much better. So I'm not registered, so I can type this information and then press register, and I should be saved in the local storage. This information should be moved and stored in the local storage so that I can check later on if this information are present in the local storage, and then in that case I can hide this form and show a tweet box or something else. So let's do that. Right, so now so there is a beef directive here. So if it's registered, we show that velse, and the velse is gonna be like We can move everything in the card just to keep it nice. Yeah, we can move this in the card and say, otherwise we have a div with the VLs directive. So you don't show me this registration form, but you show me something like an H2 and say welcome, and then we should put the username here, and then write your first tweet, something like that. We should be able to see if it's not registered, so if the user is registered. Otherwise, we should say the form. And to make this work, we need actually to check this information if there is something in the local storage or not inside a lifecycle look, and I'll use the created because I want to check before the root element has been mounted, and now and of course use this update this property in case so that we know what the user is registered, and also grab some information from the user data. So we need to actually populate this user data back and use probably the name I used for the registration and say yeah, welcome, and the name of the user. So the first thing that we want to do is to move here inside the view instance, and after the methods I can create a created method, and in here so the lifecycle look, that's how we write it. So the created is going to be a method, and in here I can write some code to inject it at certain point of the steps that view takes to instantiate the instance. So let's do the first check. So let's say they want to check if the user is registered. And that registered to true. And also we should do the population of the object. So we populate the user data object. Okay, so these are our two tasks. So let's start with the first one, and let's check if the Rocket Storage has the key that we want to check. So if local storage, so to set an item, we use set item, and to get the item, if there is an item, we use the get item. So if the get item, what we call this simple tweet registered. So if there is a key like that, and it is, so the result of this is gonna be the key true, because it's gonna be turned into a string, so it's equal to a string in the local storage, even if it's a boolean, it is stored as a string. So if there is a string true for this key, then we can update the property to true. So we can grab these registered, and we set this to true. Okay. And we can also do another check. So if local storage get item, and then we grab this one, of course, if it's registered, there will be also this key in the local storage, but we check it anyway. So if there is a key like that, and we can do this user data, and we need to parse them because we saved this object as a string. We need to turn the object back as an object, so we need to do like JSON parse and say local storage dot get item, and actually copy this one. Okay, and now it's pretty much done. So we use the JSON parts to turn the object back into an object. So it was a string, and now it's back as an object. And now that everything seems set for the next task, so show a tweet form and let the user after the registration write its first form. So the code for now looks like that. So let's check first if it works. Otherwise we fix it. And the email is gonna be Fabio. And then password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we press register and nothing happens. Let's see if we have an error. Let's see. Let's see if there is something in the local storage. Or first, let's see if we missed something. It seems fine. So the register account worked before, so it should keep working. And let's check if the beef directive is in place. Yes, let's see if we did a typo somewhere. Seems not. Let's refresh the page. Let's first check if there is something in the local storage. Okay, nothing has been stored in local storage after we pressed enter. So probably we have some typo somewhere. Let's figure it out. Yes. So we moved the button outside the form, so of course we need to refer the button that is outside the form and specify what form it should be belongs to. So we could say form. We use the attribute form and we specify an ID. So register user, something like that, and we copy this, and it's gonna be the ID of our form, and now it should work. Let's try. And then password. Let's submit a form. Okay, we emptied this bit, and let's see if there is something in the local storage. Okay, now we have a simple tweet registered. Okay, set to true, and the actual the entire object that we saved. So it seems it works. If we refresh the page, now we should see this welcome username. We can modify this welcome username and actually output the information from the user data. User data dot name should be. Okay, cool. So now it works. We will later on delete from the local storage this information so that we can repeat the process and make the page refresh itself and show us immediately after registration this this next step, so the one that we need to build actually. And well, for now, it's everything. In the next video, we will work on seeing the second task. So add a tweet box. So there should be a tweet box. Okay, and I'll see you there. Cheers. Thanks for watching, guys.